Dereta, dereta, dereta. Stoppa, stoppa, stoppa. Muokere, muokere. Hop, 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 hop. Non muova. L'asparagus.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Stephanie. Welcome back to my channel. So in the video today, I'm going to be talking about how can you prepare or what to do to prepare yourself for the physician assistant school interview. So the PA school interview, how can you better prepare yourself for that? So a little bit about me. I'm currently a second year PA student and I should be graduating hopefully in a few months. My program is a little bit longer in comparison to other programs. So this is something you definitely want to take into consideration when you're applying to PA programs, is to see how long the program is. Some range between 24 to 36 months. It just depends what program you're applying to. So my program is one of the ones that is a little bit longer. So now, preparing for your PA school interview. I have to say this enough, is that practice, 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 practice is the key to preparing yourself for the PA school interviews. I know it's very nerve-wracking, especially for me. For example, I am a very, very shy individual, and I get very nervous and anxious, especially in interviews. Ever since I was younger, when I interviewed for jobs, I get really, really nervous. And sometimes when you're interviewing, you'll have different individuals that are interviewing you. Sometimes you'll get lucky, and then certain PA school interviews, it'll just be one person or two people that were interviewing you through the entire interview process. But then some of the programs that you apply to, they might have things like a multiple interviews, which I had for one of the programs that I applied to. Actually, two of the programs that I applied to. No, it was three programs that I applied to. I'm sorry. I applied twice to PA school, so I had interviews during those two times, and I keep forgetting. So I had multiple mini interviews where basically you have a lot of individuals that are interviewing you, and I know these can be very, very nerve-wracking. And the reason why I say that is that every person that interviews you is going to have a different demeanor. I know, for example, for the program I got accepted into, one of the professors or individuals that interviewed me had this face, this unexpressionless face. They showed no expression whatsoever. So when I was answering questions or they were asking questions, they would just look down, but they wouldn't smile. I mean, they had no expression whatsoever. So I didn't know if I was answering the questions correctly or if they were content with me or etc. But then I ended up getting accepted into the program, which was great. And then that professor, she's one of my favorite professors now for my program. So like I said, the demeanors will definitely change from interviewers, but definitely do not let this intimidate you whatsoever, okay? Don't think that whatever you're answering they're not happy with, and that's why they're not smiling or showing some type of expression. It's just maybe the way they are, and definitely that's how my professor is, and she's just amazing. And so practice, practice, practice. I can't say this enough. Whether you're practicing in front of the mirror, I really recommend to see what your facial expressions are, whether you use your hands a lot or you use them not too much. Also, you want to practice with other family members because they can definitely give you really good feedback. For example, my husband was a really, really good individual to practice with because he was harsh on me. He would tell you, you know what, Stephanie, you're not answering the questions correctly, or you keep, for example, touching your hair, or you keep playing with your hands, or just a tic that you might have when you're getting nervous. So that's why it's really good to practice with an individual or even different individuals, and they can give you really good feedback. But really, guys, the key is just to practice, practice, and practice. There's some books that you can get online. I'll put the link below. And basically the one I got, I know they came out with the second edition now, but when I applied they had the first edition. It's the Physician Assistant School Interview, and it's a really, really good book. It basically tells you what questions they're going to ask you, or what are very common questions that they're going to ask you. Definitely expect the question of why do you want to become a physician assistant? And then also make sure, guys, that you're being yourselves, okay? The professors and the staff that is interviewing you can definitely pick up if someone is not being truthful, okay? So if you say that you like to, I don't know, you like to drink soda and you really don't, then definitely they're gonna tell. So make sure that you are yourself, make sure that you're honest, and don't try to be someone else when you're interviewing because they can definitely pick up on that. So be yourself, okay? With this book, you can also see what questions they ask and how to better prepare yourself, and how to better prepare yourself for every type of interview you're going to get, whether it's just a normal interview, whether you're just interviewing yourself with two other people, whether it's a mini multiple interview. I know those have become really, really popular. Like my program, actually, I think they switched to that and they've been doing that. the past few years, but when I applied, it was just a regular interview. So make sure you know how to prepare yourself, how to answer these questions. Also, you'll have questions for some programs that will give you a scenario. Basically, they'll give you a patient scenario and they'll tell you how would you act in this scenario, or what would you do. So for example, if you have a patient that doesn't accept any blood products and you try to counsel the patient, let them know that this is an emergency and they need blood products, then how would you cancel them? What would you tell them? Or how would you better educate them, etc. And it's really about how you talk to the patient. They really want to make sure how you talk to the patient. Also, certain programs are all about how do you work with others? Do you work well with others? So they might put you in a room with several other candidates, and in that room they'll give you a case. So they give you a case of a patient, and you and the other individuals in the room have to work that case out, and you'll have staff that will be sitting there and they'll be grading each one of you. So also make sure that you know how to work with others, okay? That's really important, and that you're truthful. I had one of the individuals who interviewed me, she asked me why I did so bad on my GRE. She's like, your application is fantastic, I like everything about it, but your GRE scored is on the low side in comparison to all these other applicants. Can you tell me why? So definitely be honest with them and tell them the reason why I didn't do well. It's because I didn't study enough as I should have, and if needed, I will definitely retake the GRE and I will improve my studying skills. So you want to make sure that you are very, very honest with them also. Definitely do not cry, guys, during your interviews. Like I cried during one of my PA school interviews. I was asked what was the most important person in my life or who was a role model, and I talked about my mother. Whenever I talk about my mother, I get very, very sentimental, and so I started crying. So definitely do not do that in your interview. I mean, it's good to show emotion, but then it's a little awkward if you have someone in front of you that's crying. And so I know it was definitely awkward for me. And know how to dress also. You don't want to make sure that you have your hair, if you can, away from your face. That way you're not having to keep pulling it away from your face, or it's getting your eye, or having to mess with your face the entire time, because this can actually deter the spotlight from you. Okay, so you want to make sure that you don't have anything in your face. Also, your makeup, you want to make sure that it's very light makeup, not heavy makeup. You don't want to be wearing those fake long eyelashes, right? Or that really, really dark red lipstick. So something that's very subtle. Also, your clothing, make sure that you wear something that's comfortable, okay? I can't say enough that sometimes when I first started interviewing, some of the clothing that I wore, for example, I wore shoes that were very, very uncomfortable. Almost all PA programs that you go and interview to, they'll give you they'll give you a tour of the school. Now, this is something that is elective. It's not mandatory. You don't have to, if you don't attend, it doesn't mean you're not going to get accepted into PA school. It's usually like first year students that will give you the tour around the program, around the building. And so I usually like to take advantage of all of them. So I would go to all of them just to see where the PA program is, how it is, what the school has or university has. So I made sure I went to all of these. And you want to make sure that you wear very, very comfortable shoes, because you're going to be walking a lot, especially if it's hot outside. Like when I interviewed, it was hot outside. It was like in October and it was really hot. So you want to make sure that you're wearing very comfortable clothing. But yes, I can't stress it enough, guys. Practice, practice, practice is the key for you to be able to do well. And you'll see how much it actually helps you. It improves your interviewing skills. It definitely did for me. For example, one of the interviews I had was about 4 hours from where I lived. During that entire time when I was driving, I was practicing and talking to myself over and over again. And it really helped me out, because you become really confident when they ask you a question, or that question you were practicing for. I know sometimes they'll ask you some questions that you haven't prepared for, and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, like it just cuts your limbo, as they say. And so for those questions, try to remain calm, think about it. And if you have to think about it, tell the individual, I apologize, I'm thinking about how I can answer this question. So think about it. If it's a few seconds, definitely not like long minutes, but if a few seconds, think about the question, how you can answer it, and how you can appropriately structure the answer, and then answer the question, okay? Especially for those questions that they might give you that require critical thinking, definitely, if you can, take time to answer these. And then when they ask you why you want to become a PA, be very, very truthful on why you want to become PA. Sometimes they'll ask you a question about their background. You'll be surprised on how well they know you. Some professors will thoroughly go through your application, or they'll have your application in front of you, and they know a lot about you. So they'll ask you, why did you do this? Or why did you take a break between this semester and this semester? And be truthful with them, whether it's because you had to work. For example, for me, some of the breaks that I took, I had to work because I was paying out of pocket for my tuition, whether it was because you had to work to help your family out, whether it was because there was a family emergency or something happened. So make sure that you are very truthful with them, okay? And then also sometimes they'll ask you about, for example, for me, they asked me about my research. So it was something that was really cool to talk about. They also want to know what other things that you do outside of studying. So whether you like to play soccer, whether you play violin, or something very interesting about you, make sure that you elaborate it. And also they'll ask you that question like, why do we want to choose you? Why should you go to our program? What makes you different in comparison to other PA students? So make sure that you know yourself well and you know what you can bring to the program. Okay, I know this was a very, very difficult question because I'm very self-critical on myself, but ask yourself, like, what differentiates me from other students? I want this really bad. I'm willing to work for this. I'm a hard worker, etc. Also, make sure that you know the program very, very well. I always make sure that I research the program before I went into the interview. So research whether it's your acceptance rate, whether their PANCE rate, how many of the students that take the PANCE pass it. If it's a really high number, then definitely talk about that when they ask you that. Whether it's that you like that they are located in an area that is underserved and you want to work with underserved patients, make sure that you research the program very, very well. I know there was one program that I applied to that I thought was very, very appealing, is that during their summer break, you have the option of going overseas and working in an underserved area with your professors and your fellow classmates. So they would go there for that month, for example, and they would go overseas and see patients. And I thought this was really, really interesting. And it was something that very appealed to me also, and the reason why I also applied to that PA school. So make sure that you also research the program really, really well. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys. I can't say this enough. Practice, 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 practice. Okay? What I did is that I went through that book, which I'm going to link below. I went through that book. I wrote every question that was on there. And then in a separate journal, I answered that question of how I can answer that according to myself. Or, for example, why do you want to become a PA? Tell me about your patient care experience. Tell me about your healthcare experience. Tell me about a specific patient that made an impact on you and why that patient made an impact on you and how it has changed your view of medicine, etc. So I made sure that I went through every question and I wrote these answers down, and then I went and I practiced these answers over and over again in front of the mirror, in front of my fellow family members, etc. The more you practice, the more comfortable you're going to feel, because I know it's very nerve-wracking when you're in that room with just one other person or two other person, especially if that person's emotionless and you don't know how they are responding to your questions. That's why practice, practice, practice is the key, guys. Well, I hope this video was helpful for you guys. So if you guys have any questions, make sure you comment below, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.